Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Movie Nation, where we talk about the movies like it's a national pastime. I'm your host, Ken Reels, and today on the show we are talking Rocketman is finally getting a actual rating amongst everyone's worries that it might be not rated the way it was. Danny Boyle is talking about his regrets leaving James Bond 25, as well as we're talking about the posters for Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. For most part, the worst posters I've seen all year. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. As well as, of course, we have our Movie Nation trailer of the week. Totally forgot about that. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show. And before we get into our double feature, of course, we have Us and Cruel Intentions, which was a very, very odd choice. And not something I would normally want to go see. However, there is a specific reason why I ended up going to see Cruel Intentions. And that was because all the independent films that I'm really excited for aren't coming out around me. And the fact of the matter is, I live pretty damn close to New York City. So, I expect most of the movies to kind of get a wider berth once it gets a select theaters in New York only. But it's not. They're not being released around me, and that is really, really sucky. I'm hoping to possibly pair something interesting with Dumbo that isn't necessarily a theatrical release next week. Hopefully things fall into place. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Maybe I get something independent coming out next week with Dumbo, but it's not looking too pretty. However, once April starts, then a lot of the major releases start to pick up. We get multiple major releases, like 2 or 3 major releases a week. So that's when things are going to pick up. Let's hope. But with that said, we want to go ahead and jump right into today's double feature. And the first one on today's double feature is Us. Now, Us is from the mind of Jordan Peele, creator of the Oscar-winning screenplay of Get Out. And for good reason. I think the screenplay is very, very well done. I'm not saying it is a amazing screenplay. There are issues, obviously, with most screenplays. But the matter of the fact is it working? Like, will the screenplay work in the context of the general audiences? And I think Get Out really struck home with a certain group of people. Not necessarily all the people. I know a couple of friends of mine, friend of the show, Throth, he isn't a huge fan of Get Out. He doesn't hate Get Out. I think he just has some issues and it doesn't really hit with him as hard as it would, say, a man of African American descent. And this film, Us, is much more a general audience messaging. Like, the general audience messaging of this film is a lot better than, say, Get Out. And I really dig this film. This film was so good. so good. You have Lupita Nyong'o, and uh, she just kills it. Like, both roles, like the dual roles that every single family member has in this film is just phenomenal. Like, absolutely phenomenal. There, you can't not enjoy the dual role aspect of it. Like, as an actor, you there's a lot to chew on. And they just completely are phenomenal. Especially the kids, and especially the boy. He is friggin' creepy as his alternate self, and it, like, so good. This is like one of the best films I've seen all year. Like, I would probably say it's like more along the lines of top 5. It might fall down as the year progresses, but I think it's gonna end up in my top 10. I don't think I think this is gonna be my horror film of the year. Like, I always have a token kind of horror film. Token's not the right word. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a token horror film that I have every year. I just say there is a horror film that I always try to strive to put on my list. Like, I always strive to put a horror film on my top 10 list, and I think Us has the high potential to be in that listing. And I don't want to go into any spoilers. I will say the ending had me going, wait, hold up a minute. How the hell did I not see that coming? How did I not see that ending coming? And whew, I really love this ending. This ending kind of it flips everything on its head. It definitely flips everything on its head, and I adore this film. This film is great. It is a must-see. Go see it. 100%. Just blown completely out of the water. This is, bar none, the best thing that Jordan Peele's done. And I think the one thing about it is that Get Out is much more of a slight variation. I think Get Out is much more of a Twilight Zone film. This is less of that. I think this is much more of a better take of a really good horror film. And it grabs you. It grabs you and keeps you going the whole way through, and I loved it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and transition into our second feature, and this is the first time I've seen this movie. Bar none, this is the first time I've seen this movie, and it was interesting. It was an interesting experience with Cruel Intentions, and that I'm kind of like, I kind of went in expecting a slightly different kind of ending. Maybe that was my expectation coming right out of a movie like Us, but I expected just a slightly different ending. However, the ending I did get with Cruel Intentions is phenomenal. Like, I think this is a very... There's a reason why people consider this movie a classic. And not only for the one infamous scene with the... with two of our female characters making out. And if you're any dude, you've probably seen that scene. And to be honest, yes, it is an incredibly sexy scene. Easily a very, very sexy scene. And I just loved this. I thought this film was really good and pretty much solidified Cruel Intentions as a true cult classic. There are some hokey moments, don't get me wrong, and it has a very 90s kind of style to it. And that goes into our main topic of this week, but the 90s style is so good. And this is coming from someone that grew up in the 90s. Like, really grew up in the 90s as a whole and kind of enjoy that certain style to it. And I think Cruel Intentions is very much akin to that style. You basically go into the film having very we're just setting up. The setup is very, very clear cut. Like, there's no real variation to it, and I think it really, really hits it hits home. It hits home really well. And you have these two very sexually active teenagers kind of going like, all right, I basically do things as a conquering. Like, I conquer women as basically my pleasure comes from conquering women that are hard to get. And then you have these, and that's our main character, and then you have the sister who is a manipulative son of a bitch. And she is absolutely a horrid human being. And frankly, you don't want to deal with her. Ever. And I really dug seeing Ryan Phillippe as our main character and Sarah Michelle Gellar like play off each other in this very, very... it's the incestuous nature, but it doesn't go there. And you can tell that these two people are horrible human beings. Like, the movie doesn't, in any shape or form, condone whatever these people do. But I really liked the fact that this is how you do kind of an incestuous relationship without saying that that is a good thing. And the comeuppance for the characters is very, very good. And I love this film. I really dug this film. For a first time viewing, I was like, wow, that was really good and a very good reason why this is a classic. And of course, like, I have gaps in my film knowledge, and given the fact that this is an R-rated film and it came out very early in the 90s, I may have grown up in the 90s, but I didn't have enough time in my life to watch an R-rated film at the time, because I was born in 92. So and you can do the math there on how old I am. I don't really give a crap. But it really was, it was something. It was a very interesting film to kind of jump into. And I can't thank the fact that the theater was playing it for the 20th anniversary. Yes, this movie's 20 years old. It'd make you feel old if you saw it in theaters in 1999, but I was barely a teenager at that point. And the first R-rated movie I saw was when I turned 13. Yeah, 13. And like, it was a very curated. I had a very curated life for most of my childhood. Um, and then when I started in high school, I just started kind of expanding my repertoire, as it were. And this was a very good film. This is a very good film, and it's very much it's 90s. It's 90s in a lot of its structure and storytelling, and I think when we get into our main topic, I think that you're gonna see kind of what my thoughts are on that. But before we get to our main topic, we're gonna go ahead and jump into our news stories for today, as well as our trailer of the week. And our first little news story is that Rocketman, the Elton John biopic, will be rated R. There was speculation going that it might not be because of the success of Bohemian Rhapsody being PG-13, but there was a report by the Daily Mail at the director Dexter Fletcher was under pressure from Paramount to cut at least part of a sex scene between Edgerton's Elton John and Richard Madden's John Reed, a former music manager, and Dexter Fletcher went out on his Twitter saying, "Seeing much speculation about Rocketman, that's good. It's still unfinished, but it's nothing but rumors. It has and always will be the no-holds-barred musical fantasy that Paramount and producers passionately support and believe in. See yourself on May 24th. So yeah, Dexter Fletcher, the director of Rocketman, came out and flat out said, yeah, no, that is not happening. We are not cutting it down to PG-13. We are no holds barred. We have Elton's express blessing to do this film, and we look forward to having everyone see it at the end of May. And frankly, I'm looking forward to it. I believe I made this one of our trailers of the week early on in the show, and I really dug this trail. I really dug the trailer. I really dug the second trailer that came out with a much more story oriented bit. But I'm looking forward to this film. This is gonna be probably one of the films that I'm super looking forward to for the summer. Taron Egerton, I think, is a great actor, and I really look forward to what he has in store as playing Elton John, especially given that Elton actually was a huge blessing. Like, he got the role specifically because Elton was like, I kind of want him to play myself in a movie. And now we go into a very, very controversial bit of topic, as it were, and that is that the new posters for Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out, and frankly, they're awful. And I'm going to go ahead and break down why they're awful. More specifically, not necessarily this first poster with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio as the actors and stunt double duo. I get what this movie's going for. Let's be honest. I get what these posters are going for. I just think they are very they don't really work, as it were. I don't think these really work too well overall, and I think specifically it's because I get the idea that they are leaning on the wall here, but I don't dig the concept of this, and like the background being blurry, it looks very fake. And maybe that's what they were going for, really, that the entirety of these posters look super, super fake. I just don't really dig the vibe of it. And that also goes into the Margot Robbie one. And specifically, it's just like, I get what you're going for. There is nothing here. Like, contextually, she's leaning on nothing. And I don't really dig that. I get what the marketing campaign kind of wants. I get what this marketing campaign is doing. But I don't think it really sells me on the... I don't think it's going to sell people necessarily on the movie, because I think it just looks very overproduced. And you know what? Maybe that is exactly what it's going for, an overproduced-y kind of feel to it. But I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of this poster. However, a gentleman over at Alphaville made a very, very cool poster, and I think it gives a much better vibe to it. As you can see, I've put it up here, and kind of blown it up a little bit for you guys. And you have this very 70s style poster. Like, this screams 70s. And kind of gives also a Taxi Driver vibe, and just a Taxi Driver style to it, which also went for a very 70s look. And I like the watercolor. Like, if this were an official poster, I would totally buy this poster. I would totally buy this poster and actually hang it up on a wall, because this is a piece of art. And I think good posters will sell you on the movie. A great poster is a work of art, and this fan poster is a work of art. Like, I legitimately would hang this on a wall. And you get these great little bits. You get our main cast for the most part. You got Margot Robbie in the front. You got Margot Robbie in the background. You got Brad Pitt. You got Leonardo DiCaprio. You get DiCaprio again, and just the design of it as well. You get this nice little curve so you can see, and that leads directly into the actual look of the film. Like, the actual title of the film is right there. And then you can just look at who else is in it. You got DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, obviously, since they're all here. You got Al Pacino, Emile Hirsch, Damian Lewis, Mike Moe, and then you have also all the other stuff, all the other credits, producers, director, cinematographer, and the casting. And you have kind of like all these other smaller bits that you see in the actual trailer. And then you have a nice shot of one of the sound stages, I believe, in the movie, and this looks like an actual poster, and in fact actually fooled a couple of journalists that it was an actual poster. And it was blown. This was a great fan poster, and kudos to Alphaville. And if you want, Alphaville is at Alpha V Design on Twitter. And as you can see here in the background, they do a bunch of other fan-made posters, and honestly, I would 100% buy this poster. And it was great. Like, this is a very 60s, 70s style poster, and I really dig it. Fandango even retweeted it. And it just, like, there's a lot of, like, a whole mess of people actually ended up putting this out there, and now Alphaville's on my list of people to follow just for the art alone. And that, like, I can't love that poster enough, and it is just beautiful, beautiful poster. And then we're gonna go ahead and lead us into the last little bit of our topic here, and that is that Danny Boyle, who was talking to Empire Magazine about the fact that he dropped out of doing Bond 25. The development process of Bond 25 has been more tumultuous than usual, but those familiar with the Bond franchise certainly know it's been no stranger to drama over the decades. Initially, for the Spectre sequel, Bond producers were looking at hiring a fresh-faced talent to direct, with filmmakers like Jan Dormage, 71, and David Mackenzie, Hell or High Water, reportedly making the shortlist, but the last-minute pitch by Oscar-winning Slumdog Millionaire director Danny Boyle spurred the producers to change the direction and hire Boyle in to take the helm of Bond 25, using an original story he hatched up with writer John Hodge from Trainspotting. Boyle and Hodge got to work as Boyle shot his musical Yesterday, but last August, Boyle left the film abruptly over creative differences. The producers subsequently hired Kerry Jai Fukunaga to take over the script, and the script is reportedly being overhauled by Scott Z. Burns, writer of Contagion. But now Boyle is speaking out about the experience for the first time, and he says, quote unquote, what John and I were doing I thought was really good. Boyle responded to a question about Bond 25. It wasn't finished, but it could have been really good. The filmmaker added that he learned quite a lot about himself from the experience and has no ill will feelings towards Fukunaga and the project's current iteration. We're working very well, but they didn't want to go down that route with us. Boyle declined to go into specifics for fear of ruining what the new director is doing, and even went on to say that the True Detective director sent Boyle a nice note when he was hired, so we decided to part company, and it would be unfair to say that it was because I didn't want what Carrie is going to do. I got a very nice message from him and gave him my best wishes. It is just a great shame. And chances are we will never find out what Boyle actually planned for it. And this being Craig's last outing, I'm very much looking forward to what Bond 25 will do, and that is, of course, it's an untitled Bond 25, and it hits theaters April of next year. The first week of April of next year, so we're about a year out from seeing what the next Bond is. We'll probably get a trailer over the summer or in the fall, and we'll probably get an actual name for it then. And that, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, I did not have it prepared yet, but we are going to go ahead and jump right into our trailer of the week. And our trailer of the week this week, oh boy. So it was announced earlier on that the Dora the Explorer trailer, the live action Dora the Explorer, is happening. It's filmed, it's shot, it's just about done It's just about Picture Locked and is coming out this summer. Oh boy. I am not looking forward to sitting through this, but this trailer, because we have Michael Pena as the father, which, okay, cool, you got Michael Pena to play the dad, and we'll probably have some goofiness to it. And it just, like, I hate these plots. I hate them. So the whole crux of the plot from this trailer is that, okay, so Dora is now a teenager, and her parents are explorers, obviously, and they're gonna go ahead and send her to a normal school, quote unquote. So it's with her, with their cousin Diego. And so now we have all this goofiness and yep, there we go. And this is just so bad. So bad. Like, all the dumb jokes in this just make me go, ugh. Like, I'm just so ugh. And then you have the fact that, now Diego and two other people are being in this adventure, and then you get some good Spanish actors, and they're playing essentially the comic relief, and of course you have Boots, and of course, like, it came out that that Danny Trejo is voicing Boots, and I don't know what to think of this. The fact that I guess maybe Danny Trejo voices Boots in a like dream sequence, maybe. I don't know. It just why? Why am I gonna have to sit through this? Why? Why am I gonna have to sit through this movie? It's just no, I don't want to sit through this movie, but I'm gonna end up sitting through this movie. It's just no. Please no. I don't want to. I really don't. Like, come on. Please don't make me suffer through that. But we're gonna do it anyway. And this is actually the second Nickelodeon movie that's coming out this year, which is something. I think Paramount is kind of doubling down on kind of getting some of these projects out of the woodworks, as it were. But I don't know what to think of this. This is not gonna be good in any way, shape, or form. I just no. No. Fine. And that kind of leads us into our topic, our main topic for this week. And that is being that we're going to be talking about the 1990s and kind of some of the good things about the decade, not the goofy things, like the extremeness of the 90s, like everything, all like the main, a lot of the main stuff was focused on being like extreme, with all these very super gritty sports films where it's like everyone has to be to an extreme sport like skydiving or motorcycle riding and it's stupid stuff like that. It's like there are some great bits where yes, there are extreme moments, but I think that's not the core of what this this decade is. Like, the core of what this decade is, at least to me, is that it is a celebration of just goofiness. Like, these films weren't afraid to be a little goofy, weren't afraid to be out there. I wouldn't say it's a decade that is terrible. Like, a lot of people look back on the 90s as a decade of just like dumb. There's a lot of dumb. And yes, I will fully admit there is a lot of dumb in the 90s. There is some awful stuff in the 90s, but there are some great things, like in the sense of Cruel Intentions. Cruel Intentions is a very good film, and I think with the 90s being now over 20 years old, and we've already kind of started seeing a push to kind of like bring back a kind of bit of 90s cheese to it. We saw that in some failures, mostly failures, in the last decade, in the sense of you have movies like The Last Witch Hunter, which I think is a great throwback to that 90s style cheese with a modern budget. And like, I really think that, I think fantasy, for one, had some greatness in the 90s. A lot of the fantasy of the 90s was, we were just on the cusp of CGI and how kind of that could play out. But we also were able to mix a lot of practical with that. And I think the 90s is the king of that mix between CGI and practical, especially in the late 90s, where it was very much a huge you would have things like Dragonheart, which is one of my personal favorite films. I believe that's a 90s film. It could be late 80s, I forget. Dragonheart was 90s. But it really stuck with me that this film is so good. Like, it is such a good film, and I think Dragonheart is a perfect example of what fantasy in the 90s was. And then you have films in the 90s like, say like Do the Right Thing or Casino. You get some of these politically charged messages. And I think the 90s is also kind of where Spike Lee kind of, I wouldn't say peaked. I would say got his message out there. And I think as he's gotten older, he's gotten more mellow-headed, if that means anything. I think Spike is a very passionate filmmaker. And I think over the years he's kind of been mellowed out a little bit. Not really. But I think the 90s are something to celebrate. I really do feel the 90s has a great level of celebration that needs to be looked at and said, okay, if this film came out in the 90s, it would have succeeded. Like, say, some of the smaller films that didn't actually succeed when they came out, I think are great films and should have succeeded, and deserved to succeed. Like Last Witch Hunter, I think, is a great fantasy film and totally deserves being successful. Despite the fact that it probably will become a cult classic down the line when people start actually hunting it down. Even if it's for the wrong reasons, I personally think the film is a great piece of fantasy, but that's just me. There was another film, Walk Among the Tombstones, which came out with Liam Neeson a couple of years ago. That is a very much throwback to like a 90s style crime film, and it has this great, like, it's a great mystery and a great detective story, and that one didn't succeed, and it's disappointing because it was a very, very good detective story and a very interesting detective story, as it just kind of like, as you start piecing together everything. And I mean, like, I dig it. I dug Walk Among the Tombstones. I own Walk Among the Tombstones on Blu-ray, as well as digital as well. And I'm not saying that the 90s were bad. I'm not saying the 90s were phenomenal. I'm just saying that the 90s are a decade that should be recognized as something to be proud of. Like, we're not... A lot of people look at the 90s and say, oh, that was a bad time in film. There wasn't anything good from mainstream. But people praise all like these independents, especially the rise of Tarantino. Speaking of which, like his rise to fame was in the 90s with stuff like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. And I think they're a very much they're all good films. Like, I don't have anything against Tarantino in that sense. But there are films where I go like, this has a very 90s feel to it. Like, it feels like this film would succeed if it had come out in, say, 96, 97. And even as a kid, like, I would have really dug them. At least the PG-13 ones. The R-rated ones, you never know. But, like, we have films like... there's another film that just came to mind while I'm looking through my massive Blu-ray collection here. And that is Hit and Run. Hit and Run is a Dax Shepard film. And I think Dax Shepard has a very interesting style of filmmaking that kind of gives it that 90s charm, if that makes any sense. I think he is a filmmaker that is kind of keeping that style alive. And of course, like, when it comes to animated films, like, the 90s gave us some of the biggest bits of the Disney Renaissance. And I know Disney is remaking a lot of them. We talked about the Aladdin live action that is coming out this year and is coming out next. That's coming out in the summer. And I can't really deny that this is a great film. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the resurgence of the 90s kind of style, because we're gonna start hitting that 30-year mark for a lot of these films. And of course we're gonna see like remakes and stuff like that come out, but I want a resurgence of that kind of 90s vibe. As I've gotten older, I've kind of gone back and looked at some of the big films of the 90s And sometimes they just work. They just work, and they're a lot smaller, and a lot shorter. And I think that is also a positive or negative, depending on who you talk to. And they're just more clear cut. They had a story to tell, and they told it in a very concise fashion. Sometimes it doesn't give enough to breathe. Sometimes the movie doesn't have enough time to breathe. And I think audiences are a lot more potent to watching 2-hour films. And I think with the supposed, just like a random, this wasn't a news story I wanted to talk about necessarily, but the idea that Avengers Endgame is possibly going to be 3 hours long. I think the push for longer films is going to have a backlash. Don't get me wrong, I love long films as long as they hold my attention. And I think that is the fact that, like, the classics that are incredibly long hold your attention. And I think the 90s has that kind of vibe to it where it's like, these are a lot shorter, they're a lot more concise, but they still give you a full story in that hour and a half, hour 45 mark. I just love the idea of the fact that the 90s are a thing and should be a decade to remember. It should be a decade that we remember, and not be, say, just some outlandish BS, and not be like frowned down and looked down upon. It should be a decade that people should go back and kind of watch something from your childhood. Watch something stupid, and then kind of analyze it from the perspective as an adult, and respect the artistry that is being presented to you. I think of course, like, 90s has some bad stuff. Like, there's some bad films that came out in the 90s, but there's always a level of artistry and a level of care that people didn't necessarily recognize at the time. And I think going back and looking at some of these 90s films, you're going to get a lot more out of it. And you're going to start to see, hey, this is actually some really good stuff. And some really good stuff is being presented to me. And that's what I think I wanted to point out when I said the 1990s are worth celebrating. You need to kind of look back at a decade or two later and say, hey, there's some actual artistry that is being done in this film. Or say some of the big films that came out in those years where you go like, this is a little shallow. Or this is actually something that is a classic, that is worth revisiting. And that is hard. That is a very hard thing to do. But I'm very much looking forward to kind of going back at some of these 90s films that, again, were celebrated 20 years, and we're going to start going into the 2000s, stuff that early 2000s. They're going to start celebrating 20 years. That is insane. That is insane that X-Men, the original X-Men, is going to hit 20 years in 2021. That's 2 years away. That is crazy. That is crazy to think of. the fact that these films are getting older, and we're getting older as film aficionados. And I think looking back at the idea of the 90s is something we should all genuinely check out. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end off today's episode. Thank you guys for watching and or listening. You can find me at Ken Reels on Twitter. movie-nation.com is where you can find the podcast, or at Movie Nation Pod is where you can find the official Movie Nation Twitter. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to go ahead and get out of here. So next week, we're going to be talking Dumbo, as well as, of course, what we have in terms of the news and whatnot, and of course the trailer of the week. Hopefully it's not as bad as Dora the Explorer live action. Thank you guys for doing and supporting the show. Like us, rate and review us on on all the platforms we are available. I am looking to possibly expand our platforms to Stitcher and hopefully actually kind of submit it to Spotify, given the fact that we have been doing this for almost 4 months, and we have a good catalog. I want to kind of present it to Spotify now. We might be up on Spotify in the coming future. Obviously, I'm going to submit it to Stitcher. And yeah, so that is, with those little things out of the way, I'm going to get out of here. So see you guys next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Movie Nation.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
You can like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Movie Nation Podcast, or follow us on Twitter at Movie Nation Pod.
Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you.
If that's so, and you would like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, you can do so at the respective socials or send us an email, movienation@hotmail.com. That's movienation@hotmail.com. Or you can do so on our episode post over at movie-nation.com. That's movie-nation.com.
And tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
And you have the freedom to listen to us next time.
He's looking at you, kid.